What is philosophical idealism? There's this tree make a sound if it falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it story. The realist would say, yeah, it makes a sound. Everything's the same. Whether someone's there or not makes no difference. The idealist would say, well, no, because our conception of this idea of a sound is an experience. And you can only have that experience if there's someone there to hear it. There may be waves going through the air, particles that are emanating from the fall of the tree, but they're just waves and particles until someone, a person, or even an animal is there to experience that as a sound, and the sound of a tree falling from the forest. And you can really extend this to anything in life. A book is only a book if we conceive of it as a book. Otherwise, it's just a stack of papers on top of each other. It's just particles. This room is only a room when people think of it as a room and label it as a room. Otherwise, it's just a mass with a space in the middle. And even the idea of space itself is something that people perceive and identify as space. Worms experience space very differently than people do. So the idealists takes this and they go another step and they say, well, since everything that exists, we only know it exists because we perceive it and think of it in some way, then we really don't know whether anything exists that we don't perceive. For all we know, all of existence is just our perception of it. Who knows whether uh, a country on the other side of the world exists right now? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe Japan doesn't really exist right now, and I'm just hallucinating it. Maybe this is all a hallucination, and there's no evidence that anything exists if you're not perceiving it. If you're not seeing it, you don't really know. That's what the idealist is saying. Okay, so here's my problem with idealism. For any theory, it has to be able to be put to a test. It has to be either be able to be shown as true or false. It has to be possibly shown as false. Otherwise, you can't say either way. It's what you're saying is meaningless and pointless. And in a theory is ideally you should be able to make a prediction from it, like Newton's laws of gravitation. You can make predictions from it. You can say, well, this is the law, so here's what I think. I think this object will travel at a certain velocity if I push it with a certain force, there's a certain mass, a certain resistance, and so on. And I can make a prediction. So, so right now I am sitting on a quarter, not directly on a quarter. I'm sitting on a towel, and there's a fold in the towel, and underneath the fold is a quarter. And the reason I know that is because I put it there before this video started. Now, the idealist would say, well, look, I'm not seeing the quarter. I'm not hearing the quarter. It doesn't make a sound. I'm not feeling the quarter in any way. If the quarter didn't exist, it would make no difference to my experience or anyone else's experience. So you don't really know that it exists. I mean, maybe, and if you did a brain scan of my brain and looked at my neurons and what was going on, you would see that my neurons aren't compatible with someone who's experiencing a quarter. Yes, I'm imagining the quarter, but imagination is not the same thing as reality. You can imagine lots of things that don't exist. And sure, I remember putting the quarter there, but that doesn't mean there's any evidence that it's there now because I'm not perceiving it, I'm not hearing it, I'm not touching it, and nobody is. So according to the idealist, the quarter either doesn't exist or no one knows whether it exists, and we might as well treat it as if it doesn't exist, or there's no evidence that it exists. And the realist would say, well, yeah, it exists because it has an independent existence other than my perception of it. It's outside of my mind and outside my brain. Well, let's see whose prediction is more accurate. Oh, look, there it is.